The fame, the subject matter of my album is pop culture. It's commercial art. I look at fame as a commercial art, fame as an art form. But the album doesn't say one thing or another about fame. It's not saying it's good, it's not saying it's bad. It says all kinds of things. It's a reckoning with fame. It grapples with, it argues, it wrestles. Because it's not about everybody knowing who you are. It's about everybody wanting to know who you are.
Lady Gaga's debut album, The Fame, was released on August 19th, 2008. Speaking about the album's concept and theme, Gaga stated, "This idea of the fame runs through and through. Basically, if you have nothing, no money, no fame, you can still feel beautiful and dirty rich. It's about making choices and having references, things you pull from your life that you believe in. It's about self-discovery and being creative. The record is slightly focused, but it's also eclectic. The music is intended to inspire people to feel a certain way about themselves, so they'll be able to encompass in their own lives a sense of inner fame that they can project to the world, and the carefree nature of the album is a reflection of that aura. I like to funnel interesting ideas to the rest of the world through a pop lens." The Fame is a perfect example of a quintessential fun pop record in my opinion. It's such an infectious album that still holds up to this day. Aside from its hit singles, I don't hear many bring this album up in conversation, and that's a crime considering some of the deep cuts are amongst some of the best songs in Gaga's catalog. Songs like Starstruck, Brown Eyes, I Like It Rough, and Summer Boy are all pop perfection to me. Just Dance featuring Kobe O'Donis was released as the album's lead and Gaga's debut single on April 8th, 2008. This song is a classic, and while not as iconic as some of her later songs, it is still a certified hit in her catalog and a stellar way to kick off what would soon become one of the biggest careers in pop music history. Being written in just 10 minutes, the song was a sleeper hit, spending 5 entire months on the Billboard Hot 100 until finally hitting number 1 in January 2009, almost a full year after its initial release. Just Dance is one of the best-selling singles of all time, selling 10 million copies worldwide, and was nominated for a Grammy as well. Mind you, this was the first single this woman had ever put out, and yet the following single would somehow eclipse the massive success of Just Dance. Poker Face was released as the second single from The Fame on September 23, 2008, and is arguably Gaga's signature song and what made her a worldwide phenomenon. It went number 1 in 20 countries, including the United States, was the best-selling single of 2009, and is one of the best-selling singles of all time, selling a whopping 14 million copies and being certified diamond. It was nominated for 3 Grammys, winning 1 for Best Dance Recording. The criminally underrated AA Nothing Else I Could Say was released as the album's third single outside of the United States, while LoveGame served as the third single in the US and fourth elsewhere. The latter was a top 10 hit on the Billboard Hot 100. Paparazzi was released as the fifth and final single from The Fame on May 29, 2009, netting Gaga her fourth top 10 hit. With this, she joined Beyonce, Christina Aguilera, and Fergie as the only female artist to have 4 top 10 hits from their debut album. On September 13, 2009, Lady Gaga gave a show-stopping spectacle of a performance for Paparazzi at the 2009 MTV Video Music Awards. Much like the song's video, the performance art piece symbolized the negative effect of fame and concluded with Gaga's death on stage. This performance symbolized the end of the Fame era. We'd seen the fun, glitzy side of Fame, but now the Fame was about to become a lot less fun. It was time to see how fame corrupts the pop star.
Don't call me Gaga. I've never seen one like that before.
A dichotomy within myself. I am ready for the future, but I mourn the past. And it's a very real sort of rite of passage, whether you are a pop artist, a performance artist, or you're just a human being. You have to let go of things, relationships, family approval, letting go of friends that have changed and have moved on and got married and had kids. There's all sorts of things that we go through, and we have to mourn them like a death so that we can move on. And that's kind of what the record's about.
After the success of her debut album, Gaga's label pitched the idea of a re-release to extend the life of the Fame and continued to boost its sales. However, Gaga felt that re-releases were a disservice to music artists because she believed it to be artists simply sneaking songs onto an already finished piece of work in an effort to keep the album afloat. Her label initially only wanted 3 songs for the project, but Gaga went above and beyond, creating an almost separate body of work entirely. The finished product was The Fame Monster, a darker, edgier concept than her debut album that highlighted the decay of the celebrity and the way that fame is a monster to society. Unlike her debut album, The Fame Monster was inspired by the real-life experiences of Gaga. Each song on the EP represents a specific monster or fear that Gaga has come into contact with. The album's lead single, Bad Romance, was released on October 19, 2009, and represents Gaga's fear of love. Critically acclaimed and known worldwide, the song is considered by many to be Gaga's best. It topped the charts in 20 countries, as well as peaking at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, and would have no doubt went number 1. However, Kesha's TikTok was absolutely dominating the charts at the time. Regardless, Bad Romance is 11 times platinum and won a Grammy for Best Female Pop Vocal Performance. Rolling Stone ranked it as one of the 100 greatest songs of the 21st century, while Pitchfork ranked it as one of the 500 best songs of all time. It is one of the best-selling singles of all time, selling 12 million copies, and alongside Just Dance and Poker Face meant that just a little over a year into her career, Gaga already had 3 of the best-selling singles of all time under her belt. The iconic music video for the song Briefly was the most viewed video on YouTube in 2010, was nominated for an astonishing 10 VMAs, winning 7 out of the 10, and also won a Grammy for Best Music Video. Bad Romance's music video was also named the greatest of the 21st century by Billboard. Alejandro, the second song on The Fame Monster and the third single from the album, represents Gaga's fear of men. When you're an artist with as many hits as Lady Gaga, it's easy to forget some, and Alejandro was one of those forgotten singles in my opinion. It deserves way more attention. The song peaked at number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100, giving Lady Gaga her 7th consecutive top 10 single in the United States. Notably, the song wasn't originally supposed to be released as a single, but Gaga fought her label to have it released. The song's music video, released on June 8, 2010, garnered controversy for its religious imagery. The title track, Monster, represents Gaga's fear of sex and is one of my favorites on the album. I remember being so sure that she would release this one as a single. It's hands down one of her best deep cuts. The next track, Speechless, is yet another one of my absolute favorites from Gaga. This is one I never hear people talk about, and honestly I think this song deserved the success that Million Reasons got several years later. A 1970s inspired power ballad, Speechless represents Gaga's fear of death as she wrote it to convince her father to undergo unnecessary heart surgery. Dance in the Dark represents Gaga's fear of self and talks about a woman who prefers to have sex in the dark as she is insecure of her body. Notably, Dance in the Dark was supposed to be released as the third single instead of Alejandro. However, it was ultimately released as the 4th and final single from The Fame Monster. Unfortunately, the song didn't receive a music video. Telephone featuring Beyonce is one of the greatest female collaborations in all of history in my opinion, and one of my favorite songs of all time. It was released as the second single from The Fame Monster. Gaga originally wrote the song for Britney Spears, however, after the latter scrapped it, Gaga decided to record it for herself. Britney was then considered to be the featured artist on the song alongside Gaga, but was replaced with Beyonce for unknown reasons. Telephone represents Gaga's fear of suffocation in the sense that she will never be free from media scrutiny and that nothing she ever does will be enough. It was the 4th best-selling single of 2010 in the United States and peaked at number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. The song's music video was shot as a short film and is the continuation of the Paparazzi video. Also going off script here, but I'm still waiting on the continuation, Miss Gaga. Come on, where is it? Worthy of note, Gaga has said that she considers this song to be one of her worst, although not due to the song itself, but rather the fact that she has no emotional connection to it. Regardless, this song is spectacular. The penultimate track on The Fame Monster is So Happy I Could Die, and is Gaga's representation of her fear of addiction, specifically alcoholism. I know I've said it a lot in this video, but I consider this one to be yet another one of Gaga's criminally underrated deep cuts. The Fame Monster concludes with the song Teeth, which represents Gaga's fear of truth. The song was notably produced by Teddy Riley, who was credited with the creation of the R&B subgenre New Jack Swing in the early 1990s and was a heavy contributor to Michael Jackson's last 3 albums. It cannot be understated just how monumental an impact Lady Gaga made on the industry with just her debut alone. The Fame is credited by many to have revived electronic dance music in the late 2000s. The mainstream exposure she gave to the genre exposed many to it who wouldn't have otherwise heard it. The Fame was the 5th best-selling album of 2009. As of 2022, The Fame Monster is one of the 15 best-selling albums of the 21st century without having any of its singles reach number 1. The re-release is credited with raising standards in pop music, pushing other female musicians such as Katy Perry and even Beyonce to go beyond their comfort zones in subsequent releases. The Fame Monster placed at number 45 on Consequence's The 100 Greatest Albums of All Time. The publication commented about its relevance since it was released, stating that the album laid a certain groundwork for many women in pop to follow.
It doesn't matter if you love him or capital H-I-M.
And I promised if I won this tonight, I'd announce the name of my new record. It's called Born This Way. I'm beautiful in my way, 'cause God makes no mistakes. I'm on the right track, baby, I was born this way.
Lady Gaga's debut studio album, The Fame, was founded on the principle of the glitz and glam of fame and viewing it as an art form, something that could be molded to be whatever one wants it to be. It defined fame as something that was internal rather than an external concept. The follow-up and companion piece, The Fame Monster, was about the dark side of fame, the other side of the coin, showcasing it through the lens of Gaga's fears, with each of its 8 songs representing a specific fear of hers. Her proper second studio album, Born This Way, was about making a statement. In many ways, I've always viewed it as an evolution of The Fame Monster, aesthetically and visually, as it borrows a lot from the previous era and builds upon it. Musically, the same could be said, taking many of the sounds from The Fame Monster and pushing them further while adding even more musical variety. The range of Born This Way's sound is broad in scope and pulls from many different sources of inspiration, including typical synth pop and dance pop styles that Gaga was known for, while also adding new styles into the mix, such as heavy metal, disco, house, and rock and roll, amongst others. Born This Way has a particularly timeless sound to it. As classic as hit songs like Just Dance and Poker Face are, they sound very much like they came straight out of 2008. Much of Born This Way sounds like it could have been crafted at any point in the last 40 years and still sound current no matter what the time period. This timeless sound is undoubtedly thanks to the influences of several classic yet timeless artists that Gaga has cited as key inspirations or influences for the album, such as Whitney Houston, Bruce Springsteen, Madonna, Prince, Queen, and Kiss. While accepting the award for Best Pop Vocal Album for The Fame Monster, Gaga specifically thanked Whitney Houston.
I wanted to thank Whitney because when I wrote Born This Way, I imagined she was singing it because I wasn't secure enough in myself to imagine I was a superstar. So Whitney, I imagined you were singing Born This Way when I wrote it. Thank you.
In addition to its timeless sound, Born This Way is arguably Gaga's vocal peak in my opinion. Going back to this record, I'm astonished at the sheer power behind her voice. I've always known Gaga to have powerful vocals. I think it's one of the more underrated aspects of her artistry. But on this record in particular, she shows a vocal range that we normally don't hear unless she's live. Marry the Night, the climax of Hair, You and I, and The Edge of Glory are great examples of this. Born This Way was all about pushing the boundaries, something that was hard to believe for a woman who had already stepped so far outside of the box in pop music thus far in her career. Lady Gaga is far more direct on Born This Way. There's a very clear message that she's sending out this time around. The Fame Monster concerned itself with Gaga's internal struggle, while Born This Way is much more outward and uplifting in its themes, despite the album's relatively gothic aesthetic. Quite frankly, many of Born This Way's tracks betray its deceivingly dark aesthetic. If the Fame Monster served to analyze Gaga's fears in life, then Born This Way serves as the next logical step, which was her conquering those fears and pushing forward. Songs like the title track, Marry the Night, Hair, and The Edge of Glory are all incredibly powerful and uplifting anthems, beacons of light that you would have never seen on The Fame Monster. Gaga's music and the messages in them were rather subtle up until this point in her career, cunningly clever in her execution. She had the entire world singing a song about bisexuality, and I'm sure less than a fraction had a clue of what Poker Face was really about. However, with Born This Way, the messages were very clear, with Gaga being far more direct with her lyrics and what she wanted to convey. Quite frankly, she already had the world in her hands by this point. There was no need to hide behind conventional pop and clever wordplay anymore. Boasting themes of acceptance, sexual orientation, gender identity, feminism, religion, freedom, and individuality, Gaga was very deliberate about getting her point across with the straightforward lyricism this time around. I want it to be an attack, an assault on the issue, because I think, especially in today's music, everything gets kind of washy sometimes and the message gets hidden in the lyrical play. Harkening back to the early 90s when Madonna, En Vogue, Whitney Houston, and TLC were making very empowering music for women in the gay community, all kind of disenfranchised communities. The lyrics and the melodies were very poignant and very gospel and very spiritual, and I said, that's the kind of record I need to make. That's the record that's going to shake up the industry. It's not about the track, it's not about the production, it's about the song. Anyone could sing Born This Way. It could have been anyone. Government Hooker, one of the many standout deep cuts on the album, explores themes of female sexual empowerment through a metaphor referencing U.S. President John F. Kennedy's alleged affair with Marilyn Monroe. Americano was influenced by the events surrounding the repeal of the controversial California Proposition 8, a ballot proposition that defined marriage as a union between opposite-sex couples, thereby prohibiting and invalidating same-sex marriage throughout the state, as well as the growing struggles of Mexican immigrants. It combines mariachi, house, and techno genres with elements of Latin music. Lyrically, the song talks about Lady Gaga's infatuation with a woman. This song alone captures so much of what Born This Way as an album is all about, maybe even more so than the title track itself. The way Gaga was able to string together so many impactful issues into a song, which in itself is such a multifaceted combination of many musical styles, speaks to her talent. Hair was inspired by Gaga's experience as a teenager, in which, being forced to dress a certain way by her parents, she found the only way to express herself was through her hair. The song is ultimately about using one's hair as a means of ultimate expression. It's about liberation and the ability to change one's ways. On Bloody Mary, one of the many tracks on the album with religious themes, Gaga assumes the role of Mary Magdalene, a biblical figure that Gaga herself considered to be a true feminine force. The song is noteworthy for being the sixth and final single from Born This Way, being released a full 11 years after the album's initial release due to a resurgence in popularity in 2022. Born This Way is much more than a pop album. It was very much a statement by Lady Gaga, who herself stated that this time around her music was so much deeper than a wig or lipstick or a effing meat dress. A woman who up until this point was often known more for her fashion and eccentricity rather than her music was making sure that she created music with a message this time, something that couldn't be ignored. It wasn't about being provocative this time around, it was about starting a conversation. The album's title track was released as a lead single on February 11, 2011, an anthem of empowerment for the LGBTQ+ community, minorities, and women. Born This Way is regarded by many critics and publications as one of the most inspirational LGBTQ+ songs of all time. It hit number 1 in over 25 countries, including the United States, notably being the 1,000th song in Billboard's entire history to hit number 1. Selling 8.2 million copies worldwide, Born This Way is one of the best-selling singles of all time, alongside Just Dance, Poker Face, and Bad Romance, giving Gaga 4 of the best-selling singles of all time from just her first 2 albums. It is undoubtedly one of her most well-known songs and a staple in 2010's pop. The nexus of Born This Way and the soul of the record reside in this idea that you were not necessarily born in one moment. You have your entire life to birth yourself into becoming the ultimate potential vision that you see for you. Who you are when you come out of your mother's womb is not necessarily who you will become. Born This Way says your birth is not finite. Your birth is infinite. 2 days after the song's release, Gaga debuted the song live at the 53rd Grammy Awards. Prior to the performance, she arrived on the red carpet in a giant incubating vessel, emerging from the vessel at the beginning of the performance. It was an artistic statement meant to symbolize the birth of a new race without prejudice. Born This Way's similarities to Madonna's 1989 song Express Yourself were a point of criticism for many and stirred up a bit of controversy in itself. Many pointed out that both songs shared similar chords, similar tempos, and the same uplifting theme. Gaga acknowledged that while the chord progression of the two songs are similar, it was quite a common one and insisted that the similarity was coincidental if anything. When Madonna was asked about the similarities between the two songs, she simply lamented that it felt quote-unquote reductive. A full year after Born This Way's release, Madonna would embark on her MDNA World Tour in support of her album of the same name, and during the second act of the show, she performed Express Yourself, incorporating Born This Way into the performance, immediately followed by the song She's Not Me from her 2008 album Hard Candy. This was interpreted by many to be a not-so-subtle diss towards Gaga. Judas was released as the second single from Born This Way on April 15, 2011, being a bit more similar in sound to previous songs in Gaga's catalog like Poker Face, LoveGame, and Alejandro. Many critics praised the song, even some saying that it should have been the lead single from its parent album rather than the title track. The song has a few different overlapping meanings, being about a woman in love with a man who betrayed her. It also embodies the incidents that have haunted Gaga in the past, and its core meaning refers to the negative parts of her life that she cannot escape. Gaga has further explained that the song was also about honoring one's inner darkness in order to bring oneself to light. She also explained that the lines spoken during the song's house influence breakdown talk about her as being beyond redemption, a comment on the quote-unquote traditional views of what a woman should be. Judas had strong opening sales numbers, but was notably less successful when compared to Gaga's previous singles. It just barely broke the top 10, debuting at number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100. The song's music video was condemned by the Catholic Church due to its religious imagery. Gaga notably stirred up controversy with the church the previous year with the music video for Alejandro. The final track from Born This Way, titled The Edge of Glory, was released as the third single from the album on May 9, 2011. Inspired by the death of her grandfather, the song speaks about one's last moments in life. The song received critical acclaim and is regarded by many to be one of Gaga's best in her entire discography. It's a powerfully uplifting anthem, bursting with energy and soul, being the perfect finale to Born This Way in my opinion. The song was Gaga's 10th consecutive top 10 hit in the United States, peaking at number 3. Yoü and I followed as the fourth official single on August 23, 2011. The rock and roll tune was notably revealed to the public long before Gaga even announced Born This Way. After leaked footage of her performing the song in June 2010 was received positively, Gaga added the song to the setlist for her The Monster Ball tour. She stated that the song was about the most important person she's ever met. The song's promotional material and its accompanying video featured the debut of Gaga's male alter ego, Joe Calderone. She notably performed the song as Joe at the 2011 MTV Video Music Awards, remaining in character for the entirety of the ceremony, even going so far as to present the Michael Jackson Video Vanguard Award to Britney Spears while still portraying her rowdy male alter ego. Marry the Night, the opening track from Born This Way, was released on November 11, 2011 as the fifth and final single, not counting Bloody Mary, which was released 11 years later. The song is an ode to Gaga's love of nightlife and partying, as well as a dedication to her hometown of New York City. Marry the Night was actually intended to be the lead single from Born This Way, however it was cancelled in favor of the title track. It was then considered for the third single spot, but The Edge of Glory was released instead. Marry the Night is honestly one of the most important songs on Born This Way in my opinion. It serves so many great purposes for the album and the era. It's a phenomenal opener to the album, but at the same time it was such a perfect finale to what was one of the biggest pop eras of the 21st century. It truly felt like one final hurrah and send-off for Born This Way. The song unfortunately fared the worst chart-wise out of all the Born This Way singles, peaking at number 29 and ending her then streak of 11 consecutive top 10 singles. Born This Way, the album, was released on May 23, 2011, debuting at number 1 on the US Billboard 200, selling an astonishing 1.1 million copies in its first week, making it only the 17th album in history to sell over 1 million copies in its first week. The album made Gaga only the 5th woman in history to sell over 1 million albums in the first week, after Whitney Houston, Britney Spears, Norah Jones, and Taylor Swift. It was Gaga's first number 1 album and was the third best-selling album in 2011 in the United States. It was ranked amongst some of the best albums of the year by several publications such as Rolling Stone, The Guardian, Slant Magazine, MTV, and more. Rolling Stone would also rank Born This Way as the 11th greatest album of all time by a female artist. The same publication later included it in their 2020 update of the 500 greatest albums of all time at number 484. The album received Grammy Award nominations for Album of the Year, Best Pop Album, and Best Pop Solo Performance for Yoü and I. Being her third consecutive Grammy nomination for Album of the Year, Gaga is the first artist since the Beatles to receive 3 consecutive nominations in that category. Born This Way represents to me a certain ambition and passion that is missing in modern day pop music. I honestly didn't appreciate this album when it came out, and the era went way over my head for some reason. I was much younger then. Perhaps I didn't have the mental or emotional maturity to get it. It was never my favorite Gaga album. I definitely did not hate it. I was somewhat indifferent to it at the time. I liked a lot of the songs, but I didn't appreciate it as a whole body of work like I did her other works like The Fame Monster. But over the years, I've listened to it more and more, and I can truly hear the passion in this 14-track masterpiece. Born This Way is unbridled creativity and artistic devotion captured in a single package. It's actually very hard to describe this album in just one way. It's so many things. Born This Way plays several roles. It's uplifting, it's avant-garde, it's thought-provoking, it's passionate, it's frenetic, it's dark. A lot of the traits that Born This Way possesses directly contradict other traits within the album, but somehow as a whole, it is a cohesive work of art. Above all else, Born This Way serves as a soundtrack to those who felt like they didn't fit in. What Gaga set out to do with this record was to uplift. Despite its dark, gothic aesthetic, Born This Way is very much a light in the pop music landscape, one that served to provide a beacon to those who felt left behind, overlooked, and unloved. Amongst so many themes, I feel the ultimate takeaway from Born This Way is simply loving oneself and taking advantage of every moment in one's life, living in the moment and being who you are regardless of what the world tells you. I honestly ignored the title track for a long time because I thought it was corny, if I'm being completely honest. But looking back, that was such a small-minded and immature way of looking at it. Lady Gaga wanted to bring light to the world with this song and its parent album, and I can only respect and adore her for that. Born This Way is truly one of the greatest pop albums that this world has ever been graced with, a masterpiece that could only come from one of the greatest pop stars that this world has ever known.
Free my mind, art pop. You make my heart stop.
I meant by reverse Warhol is that Warhol was putting pop into art. He was taking the celebrity, Marilyn, and putting her on the canvas. And now that this image of Marilyn on the canvas has been repeated and sold in commercialism, right? Repeated, it's become everywhere. And now it's fast food. But there was a time when it was not. Now, this was what Warhol's intention was, which is beautiful. He won, how fantastic. But now there is this creative need for us to explode into a new space. And what that space is we've come completely full circle. Now that Marilyn controls everything, it's time for art to control culture. Not for pop to control culture, but for art to control pop culture. So art pop is all about putting art culture into pop music. And from the beginning of my career, this was always a mantra and a philosophy. And I named the album Art Pop because I wanted to define that that philosophy for myself, as I felt that I've contributed and been a part of it so much from the beginning that I took helm of this idea and I made a record that I really truly believe in. It mirrors my creative process, it mirrors the inside of my brain, it mirrors my sort of collage approach to music, just cutting and pasting and snipping and sewing things like a couture atelier gown. That's what I do, so that's what art pop is.
In a jam-packed year of high-profile releases like 2013 lies a body of work that is quite possibly one of the most polarizing records in modern pop music, one that I've seen public opinion change on in real time over the decade since its release. It's an album labeled as a flop, marked as the end of the careers of one of the greatest pop stars that ever lived, one who managed to make a firm imprint in pop music just a mere 5 years into her career. The album in question was something that was truly ahead of its time in every way imaginable, immeasurably distinct from all of its contemporaries, and unlike anything you would ever hear on the radio at the time. A body of work that could only be born from the wickedly artistic, creative, talented, yet misunderstood mind of the one and only Lady Gaga. The album in question is none other than Art Pop. Lady Gaga's second studio album and third release overall, Born This Way, was about making a statement and creating a timeless body of work. Born This Way is carried by anthems and an ultimate uplifting message that is carried throughout the entire album. Born This Way adopted a sense of responsibility and maturity with its themes and its far more direct messages in its lyrics. For art pop, Gaga's focus would solely be on creating an experience, something she described as a celebration and a poetic musical journey. Art pop is characterized by its intentional lack of maturity and responsibility in stark contrast to the anthemic and uplifting nature of Born This Way. As opposed to building upon her previous release like she'd done before, art pop would be a direct opposition to Born This Way in almost every way.
Because, you know, everybody went on about all the clothes, right? And all the makeup and the wigs, and why does she always cover up? So I decided that I would use this opportunity to tell you why. I was willing and will always be willing to risk it all for what I believe in. So here I am, the human underneath the wigs.
For art pop, I, in the most metaphorical explanation, stood in front of a mirror and I took off the wig and I took off the makeup and I unzipped the outfit and I put a black cap on my head and I covered my body in a black catsuit and I looked in the mirror and I said, okay, now you need to show them you can be brilliant without that. And that's what art pop is all about, because I knew that if I wanted to grow, if I really wanted to innovate from the inside, I had to do something that was almost impossible for me. Art pop possesses a lot of contradicting and contrarian aspects, doing so many things all at once. Overwhelming to some, perhaps interpreted as unfocused or messy, but to me it is simply artistic chaos that works in the album's favor. Prior to art pop, Gaga's innovation was strongest visually rather than musically. Her music had always had unique qualities to it that set it apart from her contemporaries. It's what made her the pop icon that she is. But the crux of Lady Gaga's eccentricity has always been in her fashion, her visuals, and her stage shows. Gaga admitted to being increasingly self-conscious at the peak of the Born This Way era and made a conscious decision to refine her image a bit for the art pop era. The eccentricity that she was known for was still very present during this era, albeit a little more understated. Instead of shocking the world and making people talk with how she looked, she wanted to elicit the same feeling with the music itself. The result is the diverse, experimental, and frantic rave-like sound that art pop is known for and was always meant to be. It was supposed to elicit that crazy, drugged-up, sexy, intoxicated feeling. At its core, art pop is an electronic album. Its sound was actually what was intended for Born This Way, however Gaga opted to move in a more rock direction with that record. Art pop's EDM landscape is elevated by R&B, techno, disco, and rock flavors all over, resulting in 15 songs that sound nothing like one another, but together create a cohesive musical equivalent to abstract art or high fashion. Art pop is truly something that no other mind on this planet could have created. It is Lady Gaga at her most pure, unfiltered creative peak, whether you like it or not. It is a pastiche of everything Gaga had done up until that point, taken to a higher degree, yet somehow being incomparable to anything that preceded it. A critic from the Daily Telegraph described the album perfectly, saying, "It's like wandering drunk around a vast labyrinthine club and peering into a disorienting series of darkened rooms in which she tries on various musical genres as if they were hats." In early 2013, Lady Gaga was on the last leg of her world-spanning Born This Way ball tour in support of the album of the same name. After the cancellation of some shows due to an injury, she was eventually forced to cancel the remainder of the tour due to a tear in her right hip caused by the complex choreography she'd been performing almost every night for the past year. After being forced into a 6-month hiatus, during which she would need to undergo surgery, Gaga studied art and literature, reviewing and enhancing her creative direction. Although initially having the album forced to be pushed back due to her injury seemed inconvenient, it allowed Gaga time to reevaluate the album and make it even more of the abstract masterpiece that she desired.
When I was writing The Fame, I was struggling to be noticed as an artist. And then when I wrote The Fame Monster, there was a mixture of some records I had written already, as well as songs that I wrote as my fame began to grow. And Born This Way, this was an album where I put it all on the line. I said I want to do something that if I die tomorrow, I leave my mark on the world in terms of change, in terms of message. And art pop is a celebration of Born This Way and the Fame Monster and the Fame. It is my way of acknowledging something that is happening naturally in culture. The art that was obsessed with commercialism is now running commercialism. This is what I'm really interested in, and the album reflects that.
On July 11, 2013, Lady Gaga posted an image that most prominently featured 3 important dates: the single, which was to be released on August 19th, the pre-order for the album and app on September 1st, and the album and app release on November 11th. A brief description follows, laying out the genesis of the era to come, with the final paragraph reading, "The album Art Pop musically mirrors Gaga's creative process as she passes through the mediums of each artist she collaborates with, scoring a blueprint of her journey. The result, a rage of electronic passion and fury defining each artistic process from beginning to end. Art Pop could mean anything, but for her, this is a celebration of obsession." Art Pop was meant to be more than just an album, era, or even an experience. It was meant to be a multifaceted project unlike anything ever seen in mainstream pop music, a coalescence of music, art, pop culture, fashion, and technology, with Lady Gaga as the conduit for such a marriage. But as the era began to take shape, this ambitious endeavor would unfortunately not go as planned. On August 12, 2013, Gaga's first single in 2 years, Applause, was released as the lead single from Art Pop, being released a week earlier than planned due to the song being leaked. An ode to the art of performance, the song was inspired by the cheering of Gaga's fans, who kept her motivated throughout her Born This Way ball as she continued despite being in pain due to her injury. Applause is ultimately about Gaga's dependency on her fans' adoration and her love for performing. I realized it was the applause of the fans that really kept me going, because I would be ready to go on stage and just be crying hysterically, not understanding even how I was feeling. I was feeling very dizzy, I had a lot of vertigo, I had pain, but it's like F if I know what hurts the most, because I'd been on tour for a year, but I didn't want to let them down, and I just couldn't cancel because the thought of leaving 50,000 kids in the arena just broke my heart. So I went out every night and I played and I played and I played until I couldn't walk one night. Gaga reportedly played approximately 40 songs for her record label while trying to select a lead single for Art Pop. Applause was the last song that she played and her label loved it. However, the song was actually not supposed to make the final track list of the album due to the sheer amount of material that she recorded for Art Pop. Gaga's intention was actually the song Aura to be the lead single, but once her label showed their preference for Applause, it was added to the album and chosen as a lead single. Applause's release date coincided with the release of a comeback single from another pop icon, and this coincidence would trigger one of the biggest stan wars ever. Everybody remembers where they were during the Little Monsters Katy Cats war of 2013. Katy Perry's Roar was released 2 days prior to Applause as the lead single from her then forthcoming album Prism. Almost instantly, comparisons were drawn between the two songs, as well as a feud being dredged up between the two singers' fans. However, it should be noted that neither Katy nor Gaga ever played into this war, although Roar would outchart and outsell Applause by a wide margin. Applause was nowhere near the runaway timeless worldwide smash hit in the same vein as Just Dance, Poker Face, Bad Romance, or Born This Way, but it still managed to top the charts in 5 countries and break the top 10 in countless others, including the United States, where it peaked at number 6 and remained in the top 10 for 14 weeks. Despite this, the song's performance in comparison to Gaga's previous singles was used as ammo for the eventual Lady Gaga is over arguments. Gaga debuted Applause live during her comeback performance as the opener of the 2013 MTV Video Music Awards, where she paid tribute to her previous eras. Just a few days after her VMA performance, Lady Gaga would take the stage in London as the headlining performer at the 2013 iTunes Festival, a performance that she dubbed SWINEFEST. This iconic performance is notable for a few reasons. One, for its relatively stripped down and raw look, which was totally unlike Gaga prior to then, but also due to the fact that Gaga debuted not 1, not 2, but 7 new songs live. Aura, Manicure, Art Pop the Song, Jewels and Drugs, Sex Dreams, Swine, and a song titled I Wanna Be With You, which would later be reworked and renamed Dope. I vividly remember the absolute hype that I felt watching the live stream of this performance. I'd never seen anything like this before. Seeing her perform all these new songs that we'd never heard before made me absolutely ecstatic for art pop, and mind you, I had already been heavily anticipating this album all year. It's also worthy of note that the versions of a lot of the songs that she performed here are not the same as what would eventually make the album. Some of the differences are slight, such as different vocals on Aura, but some songs had their entire bridges or choruses changed, such as with Manicure or Sex Dreams. On September 3rd, 2013, Gaga asked her fans to help her choose the second single from Art Pop, with the options being Manicure, Sex Dreams, Aura, and Swine. Despite this, she ignored all of that and announced Venus as the planned second single from Art Pop. The song's most obvious inspiration is Venus, the Roman goddess of love. The painting, The Birth of Venus, heavily inspired the brown wig and seashell look that Gaga wore throughout the Art Pop era, arguably becoming the emblematic look of the era. The literal planet of Venus, as well as literal sexual intercourse, are also inspirations for the song. Venus is one of the cornerstone tracks of Art Pop and set the tone and direction for the rest of it. It was almost completely self-produced by Gaga as well. Although it was originally intended to be the official second single from the album, Venus ultimately ended up being relegated to the album's first promotional single in favor of another song that was released at roughly the same time, and that song would prove to be the most controversial of Gaga's entire career.
Once you have, so many people's attention, and once you have so much, they think that, as a female, that it's better for me to make inconsequential music and not assert that I'm a musician, not assert that I'm a producer, not assert that I'm a songwriter, not assert that I'm a performance artist. I think that's the thing that poisoned me. That was the poisonous thing. We just want you to look beautiful. And it really crushed me. Like, really? I've won Grammys now. I've written albums. I've toured the world 4 times. You're telling me to be beautiful? That's what this is about? Is it all back to tits and ass? That's so sad.
Do What You Want featuring R. Kelly was released as the second official single from Art Pop on October 21st, 2013. Originally meant to be a promotional single, its widespread positive reception upon its release and its appeal to a widespread audience compared to Venus caused the two songs to be switched, with the former being pushed as a proper single and the latter being a promotional single instead. Gaga and her frequent collaborator at the time, DJ White Shadow, had actually come up with the concept for the song 2 entire years prior to its release. An electropop and R&B fusion, the lyrics of Do What You Want discuss the media's appetite for publishing opinion and critique, with Gaga telling her detractors that her thoughts, dreams, and feelings are her own no matter what they do with, think of, or publish about her body. The song's inspiration came from a time when Gaga was angered by a news article discussing her weight. Do What You Want's sound was also inspired by her desire to create something different from her past hit singles. Despite being a moderate success, similarly to Applause, Do What You Want did not fare as well as previous songs in Gaga's catalog, not even breaking the top 10 in the United States, peaking at number 13. The song received 2 remixes, one in the form of a duet between Gaga and Christina Aguilera, the latter of whom replaced R. Kelly's vocals. The other version features a rap verse from Rick Ross for some reason or another. Addressing the elephant in the room, Do What You Want is a classic case of being controversial for all the wrong reasons. Personally, this is one of my favorite Gaga songs, but it's very unfortunate that it had to be attached to a very vile man. Given the subject matter of the song, her body being scrutinized by the media, it's supposed to be something that's uncomfortable. But it definitely would have benefited everyone if she had just left R. Kelly off the song, or even tapped another male R&B vocalist to do it. The song's music video was ultimately canceled for unknown reasons. However, given that the video was about somebody's body being touched without their permission, and given that R. Kelly was on the song as well as the director being an alleged predator, it was just a bad idea all around, and one that Gaga was right to scrap. All versions of Do What You Want featuring R. Kelly have since been removed from all streaming platforms and new vinyl and CD pressings of Art Pop. To date, the only official version of the song available on streaming services is the Christina Aguilera version. Dope was released on November 4th, 2013 as the second promotional single from ARTPOP and the final song released prior to the album's release. A dark and somber song that laments on substance abuse as well as a long-lost love, Dope came from Gaga's previous addiction to drugs that she developed while recovering from her surgery as well as coping with her impromptu hiatus after the cancellation of the Born This Way ball tour. Dope is actually a reworked and renamed version of the song I Wanna Be With You, which Gaga debuted at the iTunes Festival 2 months prior. She has called it one of the most personal songs she has ever done. Despite being only a promotional single, Dope debuted at number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100, becoming Gaga's 13th top 10 hit in the United States and her highest charting promotional single to date. Though not officially released as a single, ARTPOP's opening track Aura is one of the standout tracks on the album, perfectly setting the tone of the record. So much so that, as I previously mentioned, Gaga wanted the song to be the album's lead single, and I agree with her decision as it would have set the tone of the era perfectly. The song's demo leaked earlier in 2013 prior to ARTPOP's release under the original title Burka, but eventually its title was changed to Aura. This is really a song that is about a lot of different things, but what it is really is that people have a certain perception of me because I wear a lot of very visual fashion and I'm a very creative person. So this song is about me basically saying that just because all of those things are there, that doesn't mean there's not sort of the same person underneath. And then also that these veils are just protecting me from the thing that I hold most sacred, which is my creativity. And so it's really my aura, is the way that I deal with my insanity, and I feel quite insane. So the song sounds quite insane. Aura truly felt like the essence of ARTPOP, which is why it's the first song on the album, as well as the originally intended lead single. It truly feels like a missed opportunity for the era. The song is also noteworthy for being the supposed assumed third act in the trilogy that started with Gaga's 2009 Paparazzi video and continued with the 2010 Telephone video with Beyonce.
Hello, my name is PetGa. I am the interface of this application. Before you can exist in the universe of ARTPOP, I must first generate your aura.
The ARTPOP app launched as scheduled alongside the album on November 11, 2013. The app was meant to enhance the ARTPOP experience, containing many different features including listening to the album in the app itself, chatting with other little monsters, as well as having Gaga-inspired games, updates, and more. The ARTPOP app would even act as a platform for Gaga to release extra unreleased tracks from ARTPOP, as well as having users be able to create their own music and art. Again, Gaga was adamant about ARTPOP being more than just a music release. It was a project, and the app was just one of many projects to come. The ARTPOP app was truly meant to be a revolutionary and unique way of releasing music. Upon the app's launch, many of the planned features were missing, and Gaga and her team promised they would come at a later date. The features never came, however, and Gaga eventually parted ways with the company responsible for the app's development. Funding for the app was cut, and it sat stagnant until its decommissioning in 2015. On March 23, 2014, the Zed-produced song G.U.Y was released as the third and final single from ARTPOP. The song Gypsy was previously supposed to be the third single, however plans shifted and G.U.Y was chosen instead. G.U.Y, or G.U.Y, stands for Girl Under You, although during the song's development it stood for Go Under You. An ode to new wave feminism, it is an EDM song that discusses gender roles, mostly in the context of sex, and how Gaga expresses how she can still be dominant while being sexually submissive. It is an interesting concept that makes the song one of the standouts on the album. The song failed to break the top 40 in most countries, faring worse than even the promotional singles from the album. It peaked at number 76 in the United States, being one of Gaga's lowest charting singles. However, this could be attributed to a lack of push. By May 2014, the ARTPOP era was left in quite an interesting but disheartening state. It was all too clear that the era was over aside from the tour kicking off that same month. At this point, roughly 9 months since its start, the era had only 2 official music videos. The Do What You Want video was stuck in limbo, looking more unlikely to ever see the light of day with every passing month. The app was off to a bad start, essentially being abandoned mere months after its launch. Reception to ARTPOP, the album, was mixed, as many either didn't understand it or flat out did not like it, not to mention how crowded 2013 already was with so many high-profile releases. although art pop did manage to top several charts and make it onto several year-end lists. And despite its lukewarm reception, art pop still managed to be the 9th global best-selling album of 2013, with 2.3 million copies sold worldwide despite being released at the very end of the year. The singles themselves were not smash hits like Gaga's previous, and overall the album was viewed as a commercial failure. So this leaves the question, what went wrong with the art pop era? The fact of the matter is that there were several behind-the-scenes issues that ultimately ruined what was supposed to be a revolutionary era in both Gaga's career and pop music. The art pop era was a very dark time personally for Gaga. For the entirety of the era, she was at war with her label, her own team, and herself. As the era began, many of her team allegedly abandoned her as it became clear that art pop wasn't doing as well as her previous efforts. This included her own longtime manager Troy Carter, who had been with Gaga since 2007, before the release of her debut album. Troy split from Gaga just a week before art pop's release due to the two of them allegedly having two different visions of what Gaga's career and future at the time should look like. Allegedly, her breakdown during her performance of Dope at the 2013 YouTube Music Awards was due to the fact that Troy had left her that same day. Imagine having no manager just a week before your album is scheduled to release. Gaga also wanted certain songs to be pushed from the record as singles, but her label pushed back at almost every corner. She wanted to provide visuals for every song on the record, but her label would not afford her the time or budget. Lady Gaga was no stranger to controversy, but the controversy during the art pop era wasn't exactly working in her favor like it had done in previous eras. The relative underperformance of Applause, the Do What You Want debacle, as well as events like the aforementioned YouTube Awards breakdown and her 2014 South by Southwest performance were all used as ammo when discussing her downfall. The abandonment of the ARTPOP app was actually partially due to the fact that Gaga and her management were parting ways. Ultimately, with so much chaos, disorganization, and changes in management going on in the midst of an album era, it was nearly impossible for Gaga to deliver the pop culture shifting experience that she so desired. I vividly remember the lead up to Art Pop and how proudly she spoke of this record. She had started teasing it in 2011, a whole 2 years before its actual release. She hadn't shown so much excitement and pride in any of her bodies of work in her entire career. It is my belief that Gaga truly intended Art Pop to be a career-defining, pop culture-shifting body of work, something that transcended all forms of media. She wanted it to be an all-consuming experience unlike anything ever before, which makes it even more sad that it did not resonate with audiences nor make the impact that she would have intended it to. And I do think it's important to note that while Art Pop and its singles didn't do the numbers of her previous hits, the album still did very well. Just Dance, Bad Romance, and Born This Way are all amongst some of the best-selling singles of all time, mind you, and I believe it's unfair to expect an artist to continue to push those kinds of numbers. Lady Gaga had more than proven herself by this point, and that's ultimately why I love Art Pop so much. She wasn't concerned with creating radio fodder or something that would appeal to the masses. She was only concerned with creating art, something that reflected who she was. Art Pop was fearless, it was unapologetic, it was unafraid to be crazy and disorienting and ugly. That's what Lady Gaga has always meant to me as an artist, and it's why she will always be one of my favorites. Lady Gaga is a human, and as a human we grow and evolve. It's important to understand that we're looking at how an artist's discography grows and evolves, but I will always feel like Art Pop was the last album of a certain Lady Gaga that we will never get back. And that could be attributed to the aforementioned growth, but also the fact that perhaps what she went through during that era drove her to move forward and never return. Regardless of how the world looks at art pop, I will always regard it for what it truly is, an ambitious, diverse, genre-defying body of work created by one of the greatest minds in pop music to ever grace the earth.